Hi everyone, 𝗖𝗣𝗶 Biniaz here with CPI Capital. I'm joined by 𝗖𝗽 Benesocky. Welcome, Ava.
Thank you, August.
We host the CPI Academy YouTube show dedicated to adding value to our viewers' investment journey. We bring on experts and discuss all topics related to real estate investing. Please subscribe and like the video because that helps us a lot to get the word out, and we hope you enjoy the video today.
Wonderful. Thank you, August. Today, we're going to be joined by Steven Pesavento. So welcome, Steven.
Welcome,
Thank you
Steven.
for joining us today.
Well, thanks for having me. I'm excited to be here with you guys and dive into some great topics.
We can't wait. Awesome. So
Awesome.
Steven, you know what? If you could just start off by telling our viewers a little bit about your background and your involvement with real estate investments, please.
Yeah. So I'm a multifamily operator, and I started my career in real estate investing, a number of years ago. And when I got started, I had some of the same beliefs that a lot of people have that end up holding people from getting going in the game. Whether you're a passive investor or you're active, there's things that usually hold you back. And it's these beliefs I ended up learning are pretty common. But when I finally got started, I started out flipping houses. I flipped over 200 houses in about 2.5 years in a couple different states, doing all of this remotely before I really realized the value of investing in multifamily apartments, before I realized that this business that I was building wasn't going to be serving the type of business I wanted to be running for the next 20 years. And I made a big shift. And this was all after I had, started out with a career in management consulting and then in technology and have a background in marketing. And all of these things ended up leading me to the path of finally getting started in real estate. And I haven't looked back ever since. It's one of those places where I feel like you guys can relate to me a lot on this. It's full of other people who are passionate and committed to growth and really believe that you can create a better life. And it's nowhere more true than in real estate, whether you are going to go that passive route and continue to earn great income in your job or your business, or whether you're going to come over to our side and jump on and be an entrepreneur as an active operator. You can really open up a lot of doors.
Well said. Well said. I do have a dog in the race in this kind of multifamily syndicated investment space, but I feel like the people who are involved on the operation side, they all have a certain mindset, and they come to this aha moment when they make that switch. If it's from their job, if it's from their business, or if it's from being an active investor but coming onto the multifamily space. For me, what was that turning point was seeing that the operator does all the work, finds the deal, does the upgrades, bring on the investors, puts the whole thing together, and gets a portion of the profits, gets compensated relative to the performance of the asset. It made me fall in love with it because it is so investor kind of focused, and that's what made me fall in love. And I had my investor hat on when I looked at the concept. But thank you for explaining that.
Yeah,
really
well
enjoyed
said.
it.
Well, after being, an operator myself, flipping 200 houses and seeing what that process was like to individually buy, renovate, and sell 200 properties in 2 different states, I learned firsthand how much work and effort it goes into being an operator. And so I thought there has to be a better way. And I really had this realization, right? And it's this moment where I looked at my business as it was today. And many of you guys might be in a similar position. Maybe you're looking at your job, maybe you're in your career, and you're thinking to yourself, like, how do I get to that point of retirement? And for me, I was at this point where, we're a few years in the business, we're operating at a high level, we're succeeding. But I looked at it and I thought, is this the business that I want to own? And for you guys, maybe that's the question, is how am I going to get to retirement where I want to be? And for me, it was realizing that the clients that I was serving weren't the clients that I wanted to serve long-term. I really wanted to surround myself with other like-minded people like you and I who are successful, we're earning great income. And, we really believe that something's, bigger is possible. And in the house flipping space, there's people like that, but there's a lot of people who are in more of a survival place. And although I appreciate being able to serve them, it was this realization that you really get economies of scale when it comes to multifamily. And, being, somebody who was flipping 100 houses a year nearly, we definitely believe in the idea of scale. But when you can go buy 100 or 200 or 300, even 400 units at one single purchase, it almost takes the same amount of effort to get that deal done as it did a whole years of work on individual properties. So it really just lends itself to being a much better process. And then when you really look at it from an investor perspective, it it really doesn't compare, which is no wonder why it's been leveraged by some of the wealthiest families and richest companies for decades.
Absolutely.
Yes.
And large private equity firms. I mean, Blackstone, I get emails all the time where Blackstone bought this portfolio,
Yes.
bought that, and they're very strategic in their investments. And you're speaking our language, Stephen. I had a conversation with my mom. I'm very close with my mom. She's invested with me for a long time since I started in my business 15 years ago, doing development deals here in Vancouver. And when I told her that I'm making the switch from ground up development project into US multifamily, it was a difficult sell to my own mother, because I had to kind of explain, no, and I had to go over that, hey, the work that I'm doing to do a 20 unit construction project here in Vancouver, I will do less work and less effort, with most of the equity coming from my investors, on a project that is cash flowing from day one. So, but it is a bit of a convoluted and difficult kind of concept to explain to people, especially when it's got to do with private equity and this idea of, you know, increasing a rents on a 200 unit building by $50 equals to millions of dollars in asset appreciation. So
Yeah,
we
isn't
love
that
it.
incredible?
We love the concept, but we'll kind of keep it going here, because I'm sure we can talk all day long about why we love multifamily and value add model.
And Stephen, you know what? Let's focus on 𝗖𝗽 Capital. Maybe you can tell us about its inception and what pain points for investors do you solve, and what is your business model, please?
Yeah, so 𝗖𝗽 Capital is really born out of this idea. The meaning of 𝗖𝗽 is really of something bigger. And from the day one, we've been building something with the idea of much bigger than any individual or one person. Because what we're really driving for is this idea that by coming together, we're able to effectively create much bigger change in the world and in our own personal lives than if we were going to go do this on our own. And so we really have and believe in the value of partnering with experts through and through. We invite you as a sponsor yourself. We invite, passive investors to partner with us, and we end up going into the market. We go and find great, amazing deals. We partner with local experts on the ground who are executing the day-to-day operations, have been in this market for many decades. And through that partnership, we all get to benefit, because we end up being able to create a highly diversified portfolio. We're able to go and do both deals that focus strictly on cash flow and also deals that focus more on the capital appreciation or capital growth. And what that does is it ends up giving us as operators, as well as our clients, the ability to focus on doing deals with one sponsor that they trust. We go out and we do all this work and all this effort, and then we end up getting to bring all of that back home for everyone else, and the investors always come first. And so, for us, our core focus is multifamily. We do have a long track record in the residential space, so we heavily understand what it takes to build great places for people to live. And so we have a few different markets that we love, but we're not tied to any one market. And that's what's great about our model, is that when the cheese moves, we move with it. When there's an opportunity that comes up in another market, we're going to focus on, hey, how can we bring value and add value to that market? And we're really good at the things we're good at. And we find great partners, long-term permanent partners that are able to execute and do the things that we recognize that they're better at. And what that does, it ends up leading us into a position where we have much lower risk, right? Because when you're working with somebody who has 10 years of experience or thousands of units that they've operated and managed, they know and have learned those lessons on their own dime before ever working with you, before ever putting yourself in that position. But you might ask yourself, well, why would a sponsor that has been doing this for a long time want to partner with passive investors? Why would they want to raise this capital? Why not just use all of their own money? But at the end of the day, the biggest reason why is because when you, through this power of partnership, you and they are able to do much more together, right? An individual sponsor could take all the money that they're going to spread across 10 deals and they could go do one deal, but they know that they're much better off from a diversification standpoint, as well as a scale standpoint, to spread that risk across multiple different deals. And that way you have one deal that might be a home run, returning 20, 30, maybe even more percent on annualized return. You might have another deal that doesn't do quite as well, and you're returning 8, 10, 15%, right? Right down that line of the average of what we're typically shooting for, right down the middle. But at the end of the day, the biggest benefit is that through partnering, you get to leverage other people's expertise to go out and do the hard work, and together you guys get a share in the profit. So that's really what 𝗼𝗜 is all about, is through the power of partnership, we get to go out and really be able to build great communities and help people really live those financial goals that they're really after.
Incredible.
Well said. Now, we love your business model because our business model is very similar. We partner with active operators who really know their stuff. So maybe you can tell us about the vetting process that you put your operators through before you partner with them.
Yeah, it's a great question. It's actually the most important part of our process. I mean, in between the idea of how do you connect with great sponsors or operators, and how do you connect with great investors and make sure that they have the right values and expectations. It all starts for us with the sponsor. It all starts with understanding, where do we want to go and invest in, and who is currently an expert investing in that space. And so we spend lots of time at conferences, doing cold outreach, really understanding who is dominating in the market and how can we be of value or service to them. How can we bring some of our expertise to the table that are really going to help them grow their business more effectively and be a very powerful strategic partnership. And many of these groups, they have access to deals and they have access to capital and all these types of things. But what they don't have is they may not have the ability to execute on all fronts at the exact same time. And so by being able to come together in partnership, we end up bringing huge amounts of value. And oftentimes we might see access to deals that maybe they haven't even seen yet, which is surprising when someone's so deeply ingrained in a market. But when it comes to the due diligence portion, we really spend time getting to know people individually. We really believe in the power of partnership is built off of those individual personal relationships. But we don't just trust it just based on the gut, but the gut is definitely a signal to say, nope, we're going to move on. This doesn't feel like the right alignment of values or interest. But as we move past that first feeling and those relationships that we're developing individually, we like to start asking questions. How have they dealt with problems in the past? And we start to look to verify that information is true. So we bring people through kind of a deep vetting process. We look at past deals. We understand what were the projections versus the current versus what's been communicated to investors. And through that process, it really gives us a good feeling and understanding of how somebody communicates and how they're going to end up communicating with us, and therefore how they're going to be able to deliver for our investors. And so through this process, we have a very high confidence level in moving forward. And to be honest, we talk with a lot of sponsors in these local markets, and majority of people just aren't a great fit. It's nothing against any individual personally. It just oftentimes, if there's one thing that's out of alignment, it's just better to not move forward. And so that's just kind of the mentality that we've gone with. But for those that have been a great fit and everything's in alignment, that's when we actually start to review deals that they're doing and start considering a partnership. Or that's when we start to bring deals that we are currently sourcing to the table and discussing what it might look like for them to execute. And so it's only at that point, once we're very comfortable, we really understand who they are, what they're about, we really have those aligned values, that we decide to, get married per se and start pursuing, a life together in that market.
Well said. Well said. And just like Ava mentioned earlier, this is our business model is very similar. So we love this business model. And just to add to that point that you brought up, as far as the kind of the vetting process, what we've noticed in that space where we're vetting operators is their openness, their tendency to open up their books, to be transparent with us. If you have some questions, if you want to get talk to some investors who've invested with them in the past, if you have some questions about some numbers that don't make sense, about certain projections, the more open they are, the more comfortable. And again, that comes from that gut feeling you said, but it's also kind of that personal kind of discussions that we have. So those are what we. So it's not only numbers and regions, but it's also that kind of openness to share items and questions we have. One more kind of quick point on this. So I personally, I've been in the development and construction space here locally, so I understand what it means to be the local operator. I worked in a city called Richmond, which is a suburb of Vancouver. It's a large city. The Vancouver International Airport is here. Over 200,000 people. Is kind of a we had a venue for the 2010 Winter Olympics. But being a builder in Richmond for over a decade, I know what it takes to be the local operator. My connection and with the city of Richmond and the building inspectors and the city councilors and what have you, my connection with the brokers in the city, me being on the board of associations in the city. So I know what it means to be the operator and the importance of partnering with these people who are the boots on the ground. So I had that. But also, just to add to this point, is when I made the switch, I mean, initially when CPI started, our plan was to be the operator, to find the deals, to do the physical due diligence, the underwriting, to be there when the value add process takes place. But early on, we realized that, hey, if we want to be in multiple regions, like you mentioned, and we want to be able to, it's important for us to partner with active operators in those regions. So that's where we started this business model as well. And just like you said, Steven, we get to cherry pick the best operators and cherry pick the best deals they have, and then to offer those deals to our investors. Yeah. So we love the business model. Yeah. And it's a great conversation.
Yeah.
And to further add to that, the other benefit of this due diligence process is when you're operating at a high level and you are bringing a deal to the table, or you are bringing a large amount of capital, $1, $5, $10, $15, $20 million, the amount of information that you are at liberty to request is much higher. If you're somebody who's bringing a $50,000 check and you were to come to the table with an experienced operator, even with Von Finch, and start asking for personal financial statements and a list of every single deal that's ever been done, and sending over, reams of paperwork and documents and non-disclosures and all types of information, really spending weeks and weeks really diving into an operator's background, most operators are going to say, well, hey, I really appreciate your interest, but because of how much information you're asking, the deal's full. Or they might not even tell you that. They might just say the deal's full. And the truth is, because when you're in our position, when you are bringing so much value to the table and you are really coming together with such a large group of capital investors, you are in a much stronger position of power. So that really is one of the benefits of investing with a firm like yours or a firm like Von Finch, is that we are going out and finding these great opportunities, but we're also doing all of that legwork that as an individual investor, you just don't have the ability to do, because most operators aren't going to spend as much time with you as they will with us, because it's not going to give them the same ROI. That doesn't mean that they don't care about you as an individual investor. They definitely do, but it wouldn't make sense for them to spend 40 hours with each individual investor, but they'll spend that time with us.
Exactly. Great point. And just the last point here to add, in my research, I mean, to make the switch to partner with active operators, there was a bit of pride there, because I've always been the operator. I've always been, in the spearheading the whole project from beginning to the end, and to now partner with someone else and give them kind of duties and tasks that I used to do. So it's kind of a pride that I had to, hurdle I had to get over personally. But what I realized in my research on the institutional side, this kind of business model happens all the time. The Canadian the pension fund, one of the largest funds here in Canada, partnered with Greystar, one of the largest property management groups in the US, to purchase and build multifamily projects in the US. So this business model exists, is in place, is not something that we've created, but yeah, just wanted to add that there before we move to the next point here.
And now, Steven, this is a common question that gets asked from us a lot, and it seems like super achievers like ourselves, or of course yourself, multitasking is an important part of our business. And we noticed that you are a master at this craft, complete master. So maybe you can talk to us about how you manage your time, what kind of softwares and task management do you use to kind of keep up with everything?
Yeah, well, it's a really good question. I think, as the host of the Investor Mindset podcast, which we haven't talked about yet, but I've had an opportunity to interview some of the biggest and best minds when it comes to investing, entrepreneurship, success. And through that process, I've learned some lessons. And one of those lessons is that some of the most successful people are extremely focused. And so what that focus means is that they're really going in one direction. They've got one clear main primary goal. And until they've hit some level of success where they can start hiring teams and they've got that one thing being their one thing, that's when they start adding additional things on. And so what I've noticed is that when I'm best operating, it's from a place of one single mission, right? One single goal. And so for us, that definitely comes down to, hey, helping others live a better life through real estate. And we do that through passive investing for people who are earning great income in their businesses or their careers, and they want to invest with us, a done for you service. And then we also offer that with the coaching. I do a lot of one-to-one high performance coaching with both executives and real estate entrepreneurs. And we actually have a partnership program called the Deal Team, where we'll partner directly with up and coming operators to go out and do deals so they can get the same experience that we've been able to develop through partnership, because we really believe in this idea of partnering with experts. But because of those two key focus areas, everything that I do revolves around how can I help support and create better lives for people through real estate. So everything we do, from the podcast to the marketing to the webinars to the interviews to the conversations with our teams, everything revolves around that one key spoke, if you will, on the wheel. And then everything comes off of that hub. And so the way that I'm able to be in so many places and do so many things is that I really started by focusing on, well, what is going to be that main hub? What is that one thing that you're going to focus on? And then how can I create additional spokes off of that hub that will support it? And so for the passive investors out there, your career or your job, where you're earning your income, that's your hub. And investing in an opportunity like with 𝗖𝗽 or like with CPI and investing in real estate, that's one spoke. Another spoke is investing in stocks. Another spoke might be your side hustle. Another spoke might be, you get the picture. And so for us in our business, that's where we really start from, is what is that core focal point? What is that core hub? And then from a execution standpoint, it really comes down to this idea of who can help get you where you want to go, instead of how are you going to end up getting there. Now, I definitely am a person who's just like everyone else. I get caught up in the tyranny of how, or I might get stressed out about trying to figure out how to do all the things that we need to do. But when I actually come back to this core belief of finding other great experts, people who are really good at what they do, and letting them do their job, I've just brought on great people onto my team who help support. And so those people help support in the things that we're doing. They help us keep on track from a project management perspective, and really to be able to continue executing. And so we're always working on improving and bringing on team members to help support do what we do.
Amazing. The Traction Blueprint. I think the book, The Traction, has great points about that as well. Awesome. No, that was great.
Well said, because
well
it's not
said.
easy.
Yeah.
It's not
And
easy to kind of keep the things going around
for sure
smoothly.
So let me ask one more point about this, because it's important. So we want our YouTube show to add value not only for investors who are looking to invest passively, but also in people can use many skills that our expert guests come on and give to them on their everyday lives. So now this is something that we are still trying to figure out, is that division of your time. So the time is the most important component of all of this. How do you divide your time between your focuses that you currently have? You said the foundation starts with trying to solve the investor pain points and helping passive investors invest in real estate. But you're also focused in your podcast. You have your company, 𝗖𝗽 Capital. You have your coaching. Is there a certain time division that you use? Hey, this percentage of my time and it will be used on my company. This percentage will be used on my podcast. Do you use such?
Yeah. So what I've ended up finding out, learning it the hard way and continuously being reminded of this, is that when we're going in so many different directions, we have so many different strategies that are being executed at once, it can start to really kind of pull on us. It can be really difficult. And without working from a plan, and you're just working from a place of reactivity, oh, I've got this interview today. Oh, I need to get in interview mode. Or I've got this going on today. Now I need to start thinking from this perspective, right? And when you're serving different customers, even with the same mission and model, even you do have to think about things differently. And so what I found works really well, and where I'm operating from my best place of genius, is where when each week I can sit down and create a definitive plan of what are the most important items that I'm going to accomplish this week. What is it that are my main 3 objectives? And how can I fill my schedule with other things that are going to help me support those initial objectives? And so what I found, and I'm not always able to execute from this place, but what I found is where where we're able to actually focus in time blocking similar types of tasks together, I find it to be most effective. Here's a great example. When I'm doing an interview or I'm doing interviews for the show, I love to be able to have multiple interviews back to back. My favorite days are the days where I have 3 or 4 hours of podcast interviews or speaking or teaching all back to back. And now some people might think, hey, well, that's difficult. That seems much harder than spreading it out one time every week. But what you'll find is that when you're doing context switching, when you're switching between different tasks or different activities, I find that my second or third interview is better than the first. And that's because you actually start getting warmed up. And so the same thing could be true with, scheduling investor intro calls. The same could be true with doing due diligence on a sponsor. The same could be true with, checking your email. The more militant or more structured you can be about when you're going to do these different activities and how you're going to divide up the different responsibilities that you have, the more effective that you will actually be at doing those things. And so when you can work from a place of time blocking, when you can work from a place of scheduling the same types of activities together, you end up being much, much more efficient. The other thing that's really important that I found is that when you're doing phone calls, I like to just fill that schedule as packed full as I possibly can. So there's nothing worse than having a phone call and then a 30-minute break and a phone call and a 30-minute break. And so from an effectiveness perspective, it's just really trying to make sure that you're staying within whatever that your limit is, right? Because mindset, right, at the core, mindset is just the thoughts and beliefs that end up leading to the actions you take and therefore the outcomes that you experience. And so the mindset that I have when it comes to thinking about time is how can I most effectively put together all of the similar types of activities at once and do those from the same place. Now, it's not always possible. Sometimes we've got to be scattered. Sometimes we've got to be reactive. But when we can try to be a little bit more intentional, it ends up working better for everybody.
Yes, tremendous.
That is tremendous. Yeah,
no, great.
I love his advice that he's giving. I'm gonna put it into place for a lot
sure,
of the things that I'm doing right now. So thank you for that, Steven.
And it all goes back to your earlier point that you made about the super achievers that we would like to be. We feel like we are, and we know definitely that you are.
A lot of room to grow.
Is that focus? Is that habit? That extreme focus that they have is, and this goes to that is like, hey, today your focus is on shooting the videos or doing recording the podcast, or today the focus is there. Is anytime you're kind of focusing a bit over here and putting your time a bit over there, it gets away from that focus. So really appreciate
great
that advice.
Really
and
great
those
advice.
Comments.
One thing that I'm going to kind of just touch on the YouTube show again. I know we film weekly for our YouTube show, and we know how much work goes into being a thought leader. So maybe you could talk to us about your experience with your podcast. How long have you been running it? Maybe you mentioned earlier that you had some pretty interesting guests that you've had on, and also has it been educational for yourself, as we've learned from a lot of the expert guests that we've had on our show, including yourself today.
Exactly.
Yeah, I find that having an opportunity to connect with people in a 1-to-1 or 1-to-2 type environment is phenomenal for building relationships, for learning new things. And really, it's a great place to be able to share information with your audience, really giving people a chance to really get to know me. And if you guys have liked or enjoyed what we've talked about thus far, we talk about this twice a week on the Investor Mindset podcast, which you can find on, any podcasting app or on YouTube as well. And I highly encourage you guys to just jump right over there and subscribe right now. We've been doing the podcast for going on 2 years. We've had over 500,000 downloads or listens to the show. So we've been able to have quite a significant reach in the real estate space. And I think, part of that is we've had some incredible guests, from the author of Never Split the Difference, Chris Voss, to the author of The One Thing, 𝗖𝗣𝗜 to the author of, The Subtle Art, Mark Manson, to great real estate investors like Joe Fairless, Rod Khleif, and plenty of other notable figures in our space, and lots of people that you may never have heard of, but we're able to deliver some really amazing lessons to our audience and really helps improve people's lives. And so after doing 250 plus interviews, we've been able to make a huge impact. I think the big thing that I really have taken away from it is just the ability to build connections at scale. I have people who come up to me, I've never personally met in person, but they know me. They know me. They've built that one-sided relationship, and they're excited. And I think that's a really cool thing to be able to share ideas and inspiration and really help people down a path that's going to inspire them to go do something different, to go take action, to go, make something happen in their life. And that's one of the greatest things about doing the podcast. So if you guys are thinking about taking some kind of action or, starting your own show, I encourage everyone who's listening, just go out and do it. You don't have to do it at the same level of professionalism, or you don't have to do it at the same level of focus that maybe I have put into the investor mindset. You don't have to have the same type of
like Joe Furless that does it daily. You don't have to do it every single day. We're like, oh my God, how do you feel?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Steven.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, you don't have to do it daily. Now, the benefit of daily is that you're putting out a lot of content, but even Joe, he's recording 20-minute episodes one time a week, right? So 20-minute episodes, if you legitimately do those back to back, that's going to be 2.5 hours a week of recording. That's a commitment, but it's, it just depends on what's going to work best for you and how many people and what the goal is of that, right? Like if your goal is to meet as many people, then you want to do a daily show and you want to do short bursts. If you're a person who wants to go deep, then you probably want to do a longer form episode. And if you're somebody who, wants to, make some other kind of impact, there's a lot of different strategies that can work out there for you. So regardless of where you guys are at, there's a lot of different things that can be beneficial, but podcasting has made a huge impact for me.
Awesome. And we will share the link to your podcast below this video when it gets posted. We're hoping everybody to have a listen. Awesome.
All right. The next question that I wanted to dive into was, when I see somebody who is involved in this space that we're in, and it's real estate private equity, essentially we're being a fund manager. Marketing experience is a huge component and advantage. So maybe you could talk to us about your background in marketing that you mentioned that you have and how it has helped you grow your business.
Yeah, well, I think at the end of the day, one of the things people kind of forget is that in almost every situation in your life, you're either marketing or you're selling. Communication is just another form of marketing or selling, right? You're selling ideas, you're selling feelings, you're selling to your spouse or partner that they should continue wanting to be with you every single day. And every single moment, that is marketing and selling. Communication is just a simpler version of it. And so from a very young age, I have been studying and really getting into understanding how people think. I've been obsessed with this for a long time. And, it stems from a lot of turbulence, growing up, a lot of, moving I lived in 7 different places by the time I was 13 years old and, many different parental figures. But through this process, I ended up learning, how do people think, right? When you're interacting in new environments, you have to quickly learn how to adapt. And so those skills ended up coming in, to the business world when I started working, in tech and in management consulting, and then, eventually into real estate, because in all of those situations, you need to market and sell. And especially when you're a founder working in the startup space, as I did, you're working in a lot of different spaces. And so what I learned was the importance of how can you communicate your message? How can you share information and inspire people to be interested to dive deeper, right? Because as investors, we're really selling the dream or vision of what life can be like if you make these investments and you have success. And we're really selling that this is the best path to do that. And we're doing that because we truly believe in it, right? So we're on this path because we've experienced it. Now we want to share with other people. But if we just simply talk about the numbers and the technical and we stick to the facts are boring. People don't like facts. They're not going to stick around for it. So we have to be telling stories. We have to be sharing experiences. We have to be excited, and we have to really be able to lay out this path that shows that people are able to do it. And that's what's been great about the podcast and other forms of media that I've been able to experience and develop. And that's what you guys and all the listeners can think about if they're looking to go down a similar path, is how can I get my message clear enough so that anybody can hear it and understand what I'm doing? And then how can I distribute that message and podcast or this interview or YouTube? These are all just channels to distribute the exact same message. And one of the things that you'll learn in marketing is that each channel has a different kind of expectation of the best way to carry that message. on YouTube, they want 7 to 15 minute long videos and podcasts. You can do anything from 20 to an hour. In Instagram, maybe you have 60 seconds or 30 seconds for a reel. It just depends on what channel you're shooting that information out for. But as you start to get clear on what that message is and you can distill it down, you can expand it or contract it based on what channel you're putting that out. At the end of the day, it's all driving towards that end goal of how can I share this idea or concept with somebody so that they can get some value out of it. And I think that's exactly what we've been doing here today for all the listeners, helping them understand, hey, it's possible for you guys to go take this step. Here's some other people who are doing it, and you guys can do it as well.
Well said.
Well said.
Great. No, that's great. Now, just briefly, just for me to touch on a bit more, I always have these, all these questions that come to my mind, even though we don't have plans for it. But it's something that we've learned here at CPI is that I believe in marketing or sales, they call it the pipeline, the sales pipeline is, as our investor profile or the investor avatar gets to know about our services that we offer, if it's yourself or us, and now they want to connect with us. Now putting that pipeline in place of what is the connection? Is it a one-on-one phone conversation? Do they fill out a form? How does that step goes? And then after now you've brought in the potential client or the investor or the partner, however you want to call it. Now, what is the nurturing process? Because we might not have a deal right away on the table. There needs to be a nurturing for them to get to know us better, if it's through conversation, if it's through in-person meeting, if it's through sending out content. Maybe you can touch on that briefly as well before we wrap it up today.
Yeah, I think at the end of the day, that's where it comes down. If you guys are passive investors and you're interacting with a sponsor, you want to think about it from the perspective of what's the information that I would need to know as a passive investor in order to feel comfortable moving forward with a sponsor. How many touch points is it going to take? What information needs to be shared? What I've found, and one of the reasons we do spend time talking with investors over the phone, is that a short phone conversation can really reveal a lot about a person. It really can build a closer relationship with that end client or customer, and can put them in a position where they're comfortable deciding that, hey, this is a step that I want to take and I would like to move forward. And so we do keep those in-person or on the phone type of connections as a part of our process. And so I would think about it more so than what is the specific steps that you need to take. I would start even further back and understand what is it that's most important and how can I help share that in bite-sized pieces so that these folks feel comfortable and confident moving forward with me. And as a passive investor, that's something you should definitely look out for, right? You could get on a lot of lists or people could maybe cold outreach to you, whatever that might be. But I would ask yourself, well, hey, how can I build a closer relationship? One of the best ways I think to do that is, go listen to a podcast like the Investor Mindset or go listen to this show, and you get to know the people who are speaking, right? When you're thinking about investing with a sponsor, most of the big or great sponsors out there are going to have some kind of platform for you to learn more about the process, but also be able to hear their thoughts, beliefs, values, and how they carry or share those with other people. And so that's where I would start, is just thinking from the mindset of what is it that your prospect wants, and then you start putting that into practice.
Awesome. Great.
Right,
Great
right
answer.
on. Steven, you're incredible. So thank you for all of that. Now I'm going to ask you a question that we like to ask all of our guests, and I can't wait to hear your answer on this one. But what is your number one advice that you would give to a passive investor or someone looking to start passively investing in real estate?
Yeah. So the advice that I would give to somebody who's interested in investing in real estate is quite simple. Get extremely clear on what you want and why that's important to you. And if you're an investor, it probably comes down to what's the purpose of investing? What's this going to do for you? What's that outcome going to look like? And what does that perfect picture end up being? Are you someone who is looking to create cash flow because you're looking to have income to live off of? Are you looking to grow your portfolio at the fastest way possible? And what's your risk profile? Are you comfortable if there's a loss today and a huge gain tomorrow? Or are you comfortable only if things are very consistent and stable? And so as you go through that process of answering those questions for yourself, you'll understand where and what values are important to you. And then go and find people who like, and trust, and you can build that know, like, and trust factor with, and then make a decision to jump. you've got to do all that due diligence, all that connecting, all of those decisions up front, so that when a deal comes out, you know in advance that as long as it meets those expectations that you've put, those goals, that you're ready to go. And then there's no second guessing or hanging out on the fence, because you've actually taken the time to get clear.
Great answer.
Great
I might
advice.
use a few of those myself here when talking with investors.
I'm going to use a lot of golden nuggets that Steven has shared today. So thank you so much for
We
bringing
really
such incredible value.
Absolutely. We really appreciate you taking the time and coming on our show. We've been watching you now for a long time, so we're glad that we got you on our show and to add value to our viewers and investors and all the other great stuff.
So thank you so much, Steven. We really appreciate
Absolutely. It was great spending some time with you guys here today. And for all the listeners, everyone who has hung out all the way to the end, I encourage you guys, if you're interested in learning more about what we do, definitely head over to the Investor Mindset. We've got a great free resource for those of you who are interested in getting more clarity and understanding more of what you want and how you can really operate at that highest level. And you can grab a copy of that at investormindset.com/success. That's investormindset.com/success. And we've got a great resource that we put together on all those principles that we talked about earlier. So great hanging out with you guys. Shoot me a message on your favorite social media app and let me know you guys listened here. And we'll see you later.
Awesome. Thank you.
Great.